Heyo, welcome back to the Undrafted and Unqualified Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Anthony and I'm here with Vinny, and Vinny's going to tell you what we got in store today.
Yeah, so our last episode we did our favorite picks per round based on a 12 pick per round ADP. So we're gonna do our today we're gonna do our least favorite picks per round by a 12-person league again. So it's gonna be a similar format where we just have the ADP in front of you guys up on screen, and we're just gonna go down the list and kind of maybe we'll settle on the same guy, maybe we'll have different guys, but we're gonna pick our least favorite pick per round right now.
Yeah, so super similar, just the inverse of what we did last episode. But before we get into that, we got a little bit of news we got to touch upon. We're a little bit delayed. I know it's been a minute since we did our last episode, so since then, we've gotten Jonnu Smith traded from the Dolphins to the Steelers, and then Darren Waller signing with, or I guess getting traded to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that a little bit. So Vinny, what's your takes on Jonnu first, and then talk to me about Darren Waller?
Yeah. Jonnu, I'm still a little just indifferent, undecided about the whole thing, I guess. I mean, honestly, I think it hurts his value. Going to the Steelers, I'm not as intrigued about him as a fantasy asset just because of kind of the uncertainty of how they're going to use him. In Miami, those last, 8, 10 weeks, it was just absolute elite production from a tight end position. He snuck into the top five from the position overall, I think. So, just absolutely insane run from him. And I think he just really fit that offense. And then you go to the Steelers where they still have Fryermuth, and you don't think he's going to be exiled completely. So I don't know. It just feels like to me it could just be another Atlanta Falcons situation where he's just kind of the second tight end in that offense, and kind of has these option plays or these little trick plays that he's play action, getting down the field somehow. I don't see him getting the ball close to as much as he was in Miami. And honestly, the biggest winner for me in this situation is Devon Achane, which I think he eats up more targets across the middle of the field, in the backfield, and it just opens up more targets for the Dolphins offense overall. So I think it helps the Dolphins more than anything.
Yeah, I also agree with you with the Achan take. Um, I am back in on Achan, like very much so. I think he's going to get a lot of targets, and he did with Tua last year. So as long as Tua is healthy, I think Achan has RB1 overall potential. So I like Achan a lot. As for Jonnu, it's over for him, unfortunately. Like he's going back to Arthur Smith's system. So it's him with Arthur Smith, and then there's Pat Fryermuth, as you mentioned, but then there's also Darnell Washington. I don't know how tall he is, but I just remember him being an absolute unit. Like
Yep.
he's a beast of a tight end.
6'7", 6'7", like 300, I think, at the
Yeah,
tight
yeah.
end position.
Something ridiculous, right?
Yep.
So it's just like they have three tight ends in this room, and I know they run some 13 personnel, which is it's weird, but I don't know. I think John might have a little bit of value, but as a streamer, like I really don't see myself drafting him anywhere or anything like that. So, where he's going from a potential top 10 pick at the tight end position, I haven't reworked my rankings yet, but I see him closer to that 15 spot, and like right on the edge where in most leagues you're only drafting one of the guys in the top 12.
Yep.
So he's probably going undrafted for me. As for Darren Waller, I'm not really excited for him either. I think he'll be within the 15 to 20 range when I do the rankings, maybe even outside of that. Um, but I think just there's potential based on what we saw with Jonu's involvement in the offense last year. But he was old. He wasn't good in his last year playing. He's a year removed. So he's
Mhm.
not enticing either. It's great that they have a pass catching tight end, but I kind of think this makes both these tight ends pretty irrelevant for fantasy football. Jonnu will be more relevant as a streamer, but yeah, both of their stocks have plummeted.
Yeah, the Darren Waller one, I just have no real excitement about at all. I know it's a big kind of bigger name in fantasy football these past couple of years, or for the past decade, he's kind of been one of those elite tight ends in terms of fantasy. But like you mentioned, that year off, even before that year off, he seemed to be slowing down. He was always had an injury problem, couldn't really stay healthy. And so with that year off, he's been rapping. Like I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like
Yeah.
I'm sure he's been staying in shape, but I don't know. I I don't see any relevance in terms of fantasy, and I have no interest in rostering him for any upside even. So yeah, kind of irrelevant in my mind too.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good take there. Let's move on. Next piece of news, real quick. We're just gonna touch upon Quinshon Judkins getting arrested. So what does that mean for his stock? Honestly, we don't know what it's gonna look like from the NFL standpoint, right? Like I know there's been other suspensions in the past, other issues with the law, and guys don't get suspended. So we kind of just have to wait and see if his stock drops a lot, maybe buy the dip, but then again, how much are you willing to pay if he does get suspended?
Yep.
I think if we're to talk about in case he does get arrested and misses the season or whatever the case may be, in his absence, I kind of like Jerome Ford to be the guy there because he's proven for them and
Hmm.
what they can get out of him. Samson has a chance to eventually take over, maybe if that's the case, but I think Ford is going to be quite a value if things go south for Judkins. But I want to play the wait and see approach before doing anything drastic.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the NFL suspension system's pretty fucked up in general. So, I mean, to have, if you're for some reason drafting right now, I could absolutely see Judkins dropping a couple rounds in ADP because of this news. And I would honestly take advantage of it because I really don't see a way where he's not starting the season just because of how like the legal process works and all that. But like you mentioned, if for some reason he is to miss a part of the season or the start of the season, I like Jerome Ford to be the guy that kind of replaces that early touch first, second down back. And then Sampson will have sort of the three down or the third down role. I see him more of as a receiving back. But yeah, I honestly, my opinion on Judkins doesn't really change after this. As a fantasy football player, probably a terrible human being, or definitely a terrible human
Yeah.
being. But yeah, I see him as kind of a value if he falls in your drafting for some reason right now. But yeah, similar opinions to you.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it off there with the news for today, and we'll see. Maybe we'll have more news for next episode. I know we haven't hit news in a long time, so we'll see going into the next episode. But I'm gonna go ahead here and share my screen, so we can pull it up. You can see this, right? All right, cool. So just like last week, I have each round I have exactly set here based on Fantasy Pros ADP. So it's constantly getting updated. This is up to date as of today. So we're gonna spend a sec, look through these picks, and then we're gonna talk about our least favorite pick from each round. So I know just for reference, our favorite picks were mine was Christian McCaffrey, and yours was Jahmyr Gibbs. Um,
Hmm.
those are just, we talked about the favorites there. We're going to do the inverse this time, and we're going to talk about our least favorites. So if you have a guy, Vinny, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I do kind of have a guy that's sticking out to me right now, and that's Nico Collins. It's kind of just based off of this top 12 here, and my strategy when I'm leaving the first round, I want to get a surefire stud, whether that's at a running back or receiver position. It doesn't really matter to me. But out of this group, he just kind of sticks out as the one that there's the most risk involved with. I mean, he's had one elite season under his belt, kind of a slow breakout overall into the NFL, but he's also battled some injury problems. Last year we saw it, and but when he's on the field, he's very elite. You can't ignore that. I'm not ignoring that. But just in terms of the other talent around here, I mean, give me Ashton Genty over him. Give me Amon Ra over him, in my opinion. Um, just more trustworthy picks. And then also not to mention the fact that, sure, he's CJ Stroud's number one target, but they did go wide receiver heavy early in the draft this year. So that's obviously something that they're kind of not replacing Nico or kind of taking away targets in it by any means on purpose, but something that they have their mind on as something they want to improve as a group. So I don't know, just in terms of a first round pick in a fantasy football draft, if I'm leaving with Nico Collins, I'm not very confident about, the surefire production, I guess.
Yeah, we agree a lot on this podcast, but I'm gonna disagree with you here because
Really?
I think Nico Collins at the back of the first round, he's a wide receiver six here, which okay, it's interesting. He's above Amon-Ra. I don't know how I feel about the two. Um, I don't hate going Nico over him though. And I think, you mentioned that they went pretty wide receiver heavy in the draft, but that's because they lost Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. So
Hmm.
Stephon Diggs left in free agency. Tank Dell had another brutal injury that, people are saying could be career ending. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, they went this because they want to, upgrade the position. It's a downgrade even with the rookies. And they brought in Christian Kirk as well. I know that, but they went wide receivers because they had to. They had nobody else. So I think Nico Collins is the bona fide one there for Stroud. He has shown to be very productive with him. The offense now, they brought in I forget the guy's name. Nick Caley. That's his name. Nick Caley is the new offensive coordinator there. He was the tight ends coach for Sean McVay and the Rams. And McVay's offensive play callers going to be play callers on other teams have been very productive for wide receivers in the past. I saw some posts today talking about, um, the wide receiver play caller turned Drake London into an our wide receiver one, turn somebody else in, and a third guy as well. So I just like the potential for Nico Collins in this offense as the number one guy, and then also bringing in Nick Caley as a new offensive coordinator. So I think there's a lot of upside for him too, and I think you have a pretty solid floor as well because we know what he can be. He was battling injury a little bit last year, but he's going to be really good again, I think.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. I've seen a bunch of hype for him as wide receiver one overall, and a lot of people love him. And don't get me wrong, I think he's very good and very talented and a good fancy asset, but I just think the floor isn't high enough for me on him to
Mhm.
be a first round pick. I get the upside completely, but with my first round pick, I'm not necessarily drafting for upside. Like I feel like those guys have reached their upside already. If you get what I'm saying, like the
Yeah.
you're essentially drafting for the best player on your most productive player on your fantasy team. So the upside's already intact with it. So in my mind, just with these names, it's just kind of the lowest floor, I guess, out of the top 12 here.
Yeah, you could say that. I think he does have a high floor though, personally. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Like
agree to
yeah,
disagree here. You guys are welcome to pick whichever side you'd like to take there. The guy I think there's no bad pick here, right? I'm
exactly.
looking through this first round. There's not a single bad pick here. I do want to talk about Saquon Barkley though. I think as RB2 overall, we know what he did last year. He was unbelievable. Um, but as you said, with the floor being important in this first round, at the fourth overall pick in a full PPR league for a back who doesn't catch a lot of passes, it's a little bit concerning for me. I've talked about Gibbs as a guy I probably wouldn't target here, so I decide not to talk about Gibbs, but Gibbs has the floor. And I think that's different. Barkley, we know he's going to get the work, and there's a very, very high rushing floor. But, at this spot, there's Bijan Robinson. He's going to catch some passes. Gibbs is going to catch passes. There's all the receivers around him. McCaffrey's going to catch passes. So, to grab Barkley that high, like he's going to have to produce at an elite clip again. And he rushed for over 2,000 yards last year, and that's what launched him in. I think he finished at RB2 right behind Gibbs. So it's going to be tough for him to replicate. And we know he can catch passes, but that's just not what happened in Philly last year. Um, I still like him as my RB2 overall behind Bijan. But it's just knowing that there's other options where you're going to have a PPR floor. I think I'd prefer that over Barkley.
Yeah, no, this is an interesting one. And I honestly agree with you on it, where this guy had 380 total touches last year. I mean, that's absurd. And of course, that resulted in a bunch of fantasy points, but I can't imagine that after winning a Super Bowl, planning on, pushing for a repeat, that they're going to go out and use this guy the same exact way. I mean, they have to prepare for another playoff run. And unfortunately, like you have to factor that into your outlook in terms of fantasy. So like it's safe to say that I don't think he's going to rush for 2,000 yards again. I mean, he had 15 total touchdowns last year. That's a lot, but I don't I wouldn't be surprised if he reached that amount again. But you kind of have to assume a little bit of a regression, possibly. I mean, a lot of those go to Hurts at the goal line. He stole a bunch already, so who knows? You could say the opposite that those ones that went to Hurts, maybe they go to Saquon. Some of them, like it goes the opposite way. You never know, but I do kind of picture some of it a regression, and I like some of these names after him, like CD and Gibbs, over him to begin with. So yeah, I do agree with you that, like you said, there's no bad pick, but this is kind of a shaky one that I feel like a lot of people are just penciling in as he's going to be the same as last year.
Yeah. I think also just real quick before we get to round two, that defense lost some pieces, which
Hmm.
means if you're down in games, you're gonna have to pass. This team
Yeah.
was just so dominant overall that they were able to just give Barkley the rock over and over. There's
Hmm.
there's a chance they're gonna have to pass a little bit more this year. And also the run defenses in that division are disgusting. The Giants, as bad of a team as they are, they might have the best D line in the league, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But that, like, 2 games against them, 2 games against Micah Parsons, it's just, I don't know. I think you just got to consider those when drafting as well. But
Yep.
let's get to round two here. So Brian Thomas will be the first pick in this round. Um, Yeah, I'm not going to read off all the names because they're pretty similar to when I read them off the last time we did this. So just taking a glance through, is there a name that kind of sticks out to you here?
There's a couple here. And I guess I'll mention both of them just in case, but I'm gonna go with one, but I'll mention both. It's Rashi Rice and Bucky Irving for me. I don't know if you had one of those in mind as your for sure guy, and I'll talk about the other. Did
I was looking at Rice, but feel free to
Okay.
talk about either one.
I'll go with Bucky then, because then I could hop in on Rice
All right.
after you're done. But yeah, so Bucky for me, again, as we kind of like I mentioned the idea of kind of penciling in Saquon for another top fantasy finish, which is very simple to do and like smart. Like the guy's a great fantasy asset, and he was last year, RB1 overall. So I mean, why wouldn't he do it again? But it's rare for people to finish that consistently. You're a fantasy legend if you do. These are the Alvin Kamaras of the world that finish top five every year. It just doesn't happen as often as people think. And Bucky, for me, I feel like people are just kind of doing that, like penciling in, like, oh, he's going to be the lead back and he's going to get all the work and he's going to score all the touchdowns, get all the yards. Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about how we like Rashad White on this podcast. It's not that we like him a lot, and we don't think he's an amazing player. We just think he's going to be more involved than people think. And that's the main reason here that even a guy like Sean Tucker, I mean, the Buccaneers have shown that they like to use multiple running backs. And sure, Bucky is an amazing talent. I mean, watching that guy play football, it's like you can tell he's just better than a lot of the people on the field there, the way that guy moves. But that in fantasy, it's volume that you need touches. And I just don't know if Bucky gets as many touches as people are projecting him to at, end mid second round overall pick at RB9. And so for that reason, that's a little too steep of a price for the uncertainty and like possibly your RB1 and your second pick in fantasy overall.
Yeah, just to add on, they just lost Tristan Wirfs. He just got surgery, so their top
Mm.
offensive lineman is going to be out for I don't know how long, but he's going to be out to start the season. So that's a big blow. I know Bucky can catch passes, but they kind of allow Rashad White to do that too. So Bucky is more of that the guy who's going to do the work on the ground. And how I feel about Bucky Irving this year is how I felt about Devon Achane last year, where it's this guy who's now being drafted as an RB1 after having an amazing rookie season. So going into year two, he skyrockets up the boards, being drafted as an RB1 overall. Um, and I think that I got burned on HN. I was passing him everywhere. But the difference between the two, HN was he was a PPR machine this year once again. And I think that's kind of why I'm like, okay, like I'm in on him this year. But Bucky, on the other hand, I don't think he's going to be a PPR machine, and I don't think he's going to be a three down workhorse. So I kind of agree with you here, but at the same time, like back end of the second doesn't feel horrible.
Mhm.
It's one of those things like name alone, I'm like, wow, this just feels really high. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I want to talk about Rashee Rice real quick. Rice is he was on pace through 3 weeks. He was like the wide receiver three overall before getting hurt. And I know there's an opportunity for him to be amazing again, but he's being drafted here as the wide receiver 12. Wide receiver 12 overall. I penciled him in every year or everywhere last year. He was one of my guys, and I considered him a hit, especially to start the year. Um, but it feels so high this year because Kelsey, I know he's older, but Kelsey's going to get some of that short yardage targets. Worthy stepped in big. Like Worthy was irrelevant to start the year, and that's how it always goes with the Chiefs rookie wide receivers.
You.
It happened exactly with Rice, the same way. Um, and then, Hollywood Brown is fully healthy. I can't spend this high of a pick not knowing exactly what that receiving room is going to look like because Mahomes spreads the ball around and he never really has just one guy outside of when it was Tyreek Hill. Um, so I'm a little afraid to grab him here. It just feels like a reach and him being like a short area guy. I love it for PPR, but wide receiver 12 is just rich for my liking.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean, it similar in the Bucky category for me, where, like you said, it's just too much risk for a second round pick, where it's like you're getting a pillar for your team, a guy that you're expecting to return on that value and then some.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, I'm a huge Xavier Worthy fan. I think he's going to have a massive season, and I just second round for a guy that might not even be wide receiver one on his team. I mean, it seems like the consensus everyone thinks he is, which I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But like, like you said, that him and Worthy built a huge rapport while Rashee Rice was out. And so that's unfortunate for Rice, but the team as a whole, they're going to go to the guy that they trust. And not that they don't trust Rashee Rice, but it's going to take some time for him to get used to being on the field with Worthy, having that role. And like you mentioned, still Kelsey being there, still a bunch of other receivers on the depth chart. And we know Mahomes likes to throw it around. He doesn't really zone in on one guy. So, like you said, second round seems way too high. And I'd be super surprised if he returns this value just because I don't know. I think it's going to take some adjusting, and you don't want that for a second round pick. You don't want to wait on a second round pick to kind of hit their value.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. You want a little bit of a floor here when you're
Yeah.
drafting first few rounds. Let's get to round three here. So yep, starting with Garrett Wilson down to Kyron here.
Hmm.
I see a name, couple names. Well, I'll let you go first if you got it.
Hmm. Hey, if you got one, go ahead. I'm deciding between a couple, so.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna talk about I would love to talk about Terry, but we've talked about him before, so I'm not going to. I want to talk about Devontae Adams.
Hmm.
Adams is 32 years old, going to a new team. I know he's the number two guy there with Puka Nacua, but you're spending a third round pick for the wide receiver 16 overall, and you're getting a guy we don't know what the situation is going to be. I know he was still very, very dominant, and he has not fallen off. He's going to catch touchdowns. He's that kind of guy. He's a PPR beast, but when guys turn 32 and go to a new team, they tend to fall off. We saw it with, I think, Jordy Nelson when he went to Vegas. Well, at the time, I think it was still the Oakland Raiders. but when he went to a new team, he fell off. Cooper Cup, I kind of anticipate the same thing happening, and ADP is locking in on that too. ADP has Cooper Cup at like wide receiver 45, something like that. Like they're not it was 3 games of him falling off, and people are anticipating that. And I know, again, Adams didn't fall off. Adams didn't have that issue, but going to a new team at his age, it does scare me a little bit. And I just think this is a rich price tag for him. While I think he is still going to be good, and I think Adams is different than some of these other guys, it's a little rich. I'd prefer Marvin Harrison right behind him. JSN I'd probably prefer as well. So, those are two receivers going right behind him who I think I'd take over him. And, maybe there's even more in the fourth round that we're not even looking at right now.
Yeah, no, I have mixed feelings about this one. Like you've kind of touched on both sides of it well. Like Devontae Adams does seem to kind of be that kind of Iron Man fantasy value where he just can't fall off. He keeps producing. Even last year, I had him on a few teams that he had some great games towards the end of the year that maybe won some people some fantasy leagues. So the only thing that just if he went to any other team, but the fact that he's going to Sean McVay, a person that
Yeah.
has shown he can produce fantasy value. Not that he's doing it purposefully, but there's two receivers work on that team. And we've seen it with Puka and Cup, both like putting up good numbers simultaneously. Um, but like you mentioned, in the middle of the third, it's a little steep, but I feel like this is kind of where I would value him. It just kind of depends on the team build. I wouldn't feel comfortable with him as my wide receiver one, but if he's my wide receiver two, if I go running back or wide receiver, running back, receiver, then maybe I'm feeling a little bit better about that. But I wouldn't want to leave with Adams as my receiver one. So, and I guess that's what I'll say about it is
Yeah.
in terms of that value not being a wide receiver one in my mind.
I guess I'm also just concerned because he's never not been the wide receiver one on his team,
True,
the
true.
NFL team, right? So now he's stepping in. I think Puka's the one there. So what's it going to look like for him not being the number one guy? So
Yeah.
I factor that in as well. But go ahead and tell us who your guy is here.
Yeah, this is one that, I just kind of he's been on my do not draft list just because kind of getting burned in the past.
Hmm.
Is Garrett Wilson. I think, this is a guy that since he's been drafted has kind of been deemed as this just elite receiver. And he's kind of yet, even though he may be very talented in terms of fantasy, he's yet to kind of produce that season that everyone's been expecting from him. Like last year, he was wide receiver 11, borderline receiver one in fantasy, but I just don't see him improving with Fields, honestly. I'm not a big fan of Fields and I don't trust his passing ability. I know people are going to point to that one season with DJ Moore in which he kind of broke out. I just don't easily kind of transfer over, situations like that. It's a different team, it's a different player, different offense. Um, the only thing that, kind of has me going back to him a little bit is the fact that there's no one else there to get targets. So again, he's going to see 130 targets plus, but he's had that before in the past, and he's still yet to produce that elite season with them. So again, kind of with the Adams, I don't want to leave with Wilson as my wide receiver one. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But yeah, it's kind of just someone I'm just not interested in drafting at the top of the third. I'd much rather have all these guys behind him. A lot more so. I think when we make our rankings episode, he's going to be farther down than some people might expect for me.
Yeah, see, I like Wilson a lot. I like him a lot more than Adams. I think again PPR the receptions matter, and I think he's gonna just get like you said 130 plus. I think there's a chance he's getting 160 plus. Like
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be
there's
surprised.
there's just nobody there, and I think they're gonna have to funnel him the ball, like force feed him the ball to the point where it's like, all right, he's gonna produce just because of the volume. And that's why I'm in on Garrett Wilson. But yeah, I'll be curious to see where he lands in my rankings as well. Let's see here. Round four, starting with Mike Evans here. Okay. I remember this from last episode when this was like, okay, we're in round four and we're already not liking a lot of these names.
Yeah.
So
Hmm. Yeah, this is more interesting with the least favorite picks because I'm starting to
yeah,
resin like pick more quickly. Like, oh, that's pretty high. Like,
yeah,
there's a few guys here that I'm a little skeptical of.
yeah. There's a good few names. I know James Cook jumps to mind. Um, Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about James Cook actually. I'll leave the rest of the board as is, just because Hampton I would maybe talk about, but now there's the whole Najee issue with the fireworks,
Yeah.
so maybe Hampton does take over sooner than we think. James Cook's gonna hit a serious touchdown regression, and he was averaging 2 touchdowns a year prior to this past year, where he had what I think 16 total touchdowns. Um, he's not gonna do that again. But I also know he won't get 2 touchdowns again. I don't think that average is going to stay for him. I think, but drop from 16 to even 8, and that's a drastically different season for him. So getting him here in round four, I don't like it. And then there's the whole contract situation with him right now. And then they have a couple other guys. They have Ray Davis. They have Ty Johnson, who had more receiving yards than James Cook last year. So I don't know what to think about this team. I know James Cook is their best back like on the ground and everything, but I don't know. I'm a little worried about what this team might look like. He had a good amount of goal line carries last year too, and I kind of anticipate Josh Allen taking that back over. And they're a run first team, yada yada. I get it, but it's still a little high, even after the season he had last year. He didn't finish super high with all those touchdowns, so only dropping him a few spots back, expecting regression. I think I'd drop him back even a few spots more.
Yeah. I mean, Cook, usually in fantasy drafts every offseason, I look to kind of target those guys that are in the contract disputes because usually they drop for some reason, but they always end up getting figured out. Like
Yeah.
it's rare for a player. I mean, we've seen it with Le'Veon Bell. That's the famous incident, but holdouts and for these kind of currently haven't been as prevalent. I mean, I know there's some rookie holdouts, but for major guys that have NFL production, it's not as prevalent. So I kind of look to target those guys. Honestly, it doesn't seem to be affecting Cook's ADP as much. But I don't know. I feel like in the fourth round here, if he's my RB2, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about that in my mind. Like I feel like he provides a safe enough floor where you kind of know what you're getting out of him. But as you mentioned, some of the guys behind him, I this is also a kind of round I would be willing to take a shot on a guy for some more upside. And a guy like a Marion Hampton or Ken Walker even. I think I would rather have than James Cook. So I guess I do agree with you here that this isn't a guy that I would necessarily be looking for, but depending on a certain team build, I would feel comfortable with him as my RB2.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more upside with Cook than some of these guys behind him too, actually, because I know in later rounds there's going to be guys like James Conner, floor,
Hmm. Hmm.
Joe Mixon, floor, Chuba Hubbard, floor. So, those three guys, they come with a floor who I like that as my RB2. So, James Cook has got a better shot to finish higher than those guys with the upside, but, I don't know. It just feels like a weird spot for him, and it's tough for me to wrap my head around that in this specific round.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the guy that I'm going to go with here is Jameson Williams. And it's a tough one because he's towards the bottom of that round. So, I guess you could really call him close to a fifth round pick in some leagues. But I don't know. I see a lot of hype surrounding him, and I get it. A high NFL draft pick, good college production, finally crossed the 1,000 yard marker last year, had a good year. But I don't really get the hype around like a massive improvement. Like, I mean, they lose Ben Johnson, who is kind of been the offensive mastermind there for the past few years at least. The offense stays generally the same. There's still Amon Ra there. There's still Sam Laporta. They still have Montgomery and Gibbs. So it's not like there's many vacated targets that are going to go to Jameson Williams. And, he is kind of that streaky receiver in terms of his reliability on his hands. We've seen bad drops from him. He's kind of that deep threat, so he's a streaky kind of boom bust guy on some games. And in the fourth round, I don't see as much upside as maybe other people do in the fantasy community right now. I think his floor is kind of like flirting with that 1,000 yard, or I think, yeah, he's going to flirt with that 1,000 yard number every year. But we've seen in the NFL now that's not an impressive stat anymore. There's like 30 plus receivers putting up 1,000 yards now. So I mean, yeah, I don't see as much of an upside, and honestly, I think his situation potentially got worse with Ben Johnson leaving. So yeah, I'm not really wouldn't be excited to take Jamison Williams in this spot.
Yeah, I have to dig in a little more because I do believe some of the hype that everybody's saying like in their staff room and everything. Oh, he's gonna break out. He's gonna break out. But yeah, it just still feels like wow, fourth round for Jamison Williams. Just I'm
Yeah,
feels high. I'm really curious. We're gonna see right here in the fifth round who some of these receivers are. Like, yeah, first guy, Devontae Smith. That feels so much better than Jamison Williams.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
first one there, just to say, oh, and like talk about James Cook too. Alvin Kamara's here. I'd much prefer Kamara. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess the fourth round has some of those upside guys where, maybe we're not buying into it as much as other people. And then fifth round, you have some guys you feel much better about. Um, yeah, I gotta take a look here, but if you got somebody, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I see one right off the bat, and honestly, I took a peek at the next round just to kind of justify this further. I won't spoil any of the names, but Juwan Jennings is my pick here. Again, a guy with a lot of hype, just kind of based off of the situation. We've talked about him a little bit on here as well. It's not that I dislike him, but as I mentioned, that we'll get to some of the guys. You'll see some of the guys on the next slide, but there's just some names there that I think the next eight somewhat guys I just rather have. I see more upside. I don't see as much upside with Juwan Jennings. I mean, I get the targets that he's gonna be thrown into. That Debo's gone. Ayuk's not gonna start the season, but I honestly believe a lot more in Ricky Pearsall to kind of take over that potential number one role while Ayuk's out. I mean, I guess we have Kittle there too. So as the number one receiving option, or receiving options Kittle, but receiver overall, I think will be Pearsall. So it's just not an exciting pick here for the fifth round. I mean, it's some that like there's not much upside. The floor's a little shaky. So some of the names around him, behind him, I just would much rather have. I'm honestly surprised to see him this high.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. The wide receivers go early. Like we're at wide receiver 33 through only 5 rounds, which is
Seriously.
crazy. Yeah, I talked about Jennings as my value. I just double checked to make sure that that's the episode I talked about him. But
Mhm,
here it almost doesn't feel like he's a value because
mhm.
he's climbing up from where I was talking about him as the guy. So I know he was like I think mid sixth maybe, and that felt a little more appropriate. But
I think even seventh when you were talking about him. Like I feel
really,
like later.
really.
Yeah, so
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I know it was at least the sixth. So yeah, I would agree it does feel a little rich now, whereas, originally it was a value for me. But yeah, I like Ridley a lot. So, Ridley 4 picks higher, give me him all day over
you.
Jennings. Yeah, I think the guy I'm gonna talk about is Waddle. It was such a down year for him. And I do buy back into the fact that I think Miami's gonna right the ship a little bit, but it was so bad that this feels a little early. Wide receiver 29, early fifth. You're getting him as your wide receiver 2 or 3. And that feels early. I would much prefer him as my 3, maybe even my 4, and I don't know if I could get on board with that. I love Pickens and would take him 10 out of 10 times over Waddle. And he's going 1 pick earlier. Sutton, I would take 10 out of 10 times over him. Smith, 10 out of 10 times over him. Um, Zay Flowers, I would gladly take over him. Ridley, I would take over him. So just some of these names around. I'm scared of Waddle, and I don't think I'm gonna bite on that bait this year.
Yeah, no, I honestly, my first instinct was like, I mean, I don't know. Jalen Waddle's a good player, but I had to look into his
Yeah.
finishes these past few years, and it's been brutal for him. He's been outside the top 30 these past two seasons,
Yep.
since his seven overall finish at wide receiver. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's a really risky pick. You're betting on a lot of things. The Dolphins offense getting back to the way where they're putting up 40 a game and blowing people out. Is Tua gonna play all 17 games or even, close to that number? You know, it it's a lot of things that you're betting on, and I agree with you that I'd rather have a lot of the guys after him. Besides Juwan Jennings, I think I'd rather have Waddle, honestly. But yeah, a lot of the other these
Yeah.
guys I'd rather take a shot on. So yeah, it was surprising to me though. I wanted to defend Jalen Waddle, but I really can't.
Yeah, the talent's there. We know that,
Yeah,
but the fantasy finishes are not. But let's
no.
let's get into the sixth round here. We're definitely gonna go a little over an hour today, so hopefully y'all bear with us in this episode. A little bit of news never hurt nobody. But yeah, sixth round here. I know you said you looked ahead, so if you got somebody, feel free to
Well,
go.
yeah, I was more saying I was looking ahead in terms of like I'd rather have those guys
Hmm.
over Juwan Jennings. So it was a lot of names I liked, honestly. So this might be
Yeah, Olave, Godwin. I like both of those over Jennings.
I mean, honestly, looking at it now, I think I'm gonna have to go with Chris Olave as my guy that I don't like here. Again, he kind of I don't want to compare him to Garrett Wilson just because I think Garrett Wilson's been much more productive in terms of fantasy. But Olave is kind of in that same boat where like he was just this elite prospect coming out and oh shit. And and everyone I think my light bulb just went out, but and everyone kind of penciled him in as being this elite fantasy asset, and he just hasn't returned that value. And then you come in with the QB carousel that he's dealing with. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
bunch of jokes at the position. And you could make the argument that, like, well, he's going to get peppered with targets. Honestly, with this, New Orleans QB room, I'm not even trusting the guys to make those easy throws to Lave over the middle or whatever he's doing, the drag routes. I don't even trust them to do that. I just think it's a messy situation overall, and I kind of want nothing to do with the New Orleans Saints in terms of fantasy besides Alvin Kamara. So yeah, I'm kind of out completely on Chris Olave until he proves me wrong, and his situation decreased dramatically, so I don't see it improving.
Yeah, I'm not out completely. I like Olave just because I think the target's got to go somewhere again. So yeah, I think volume may help. I worry about the concussions though. So I
Mm.
think he's in a fine spot here. I don't think it's too high. I don't think it's too low. So that's where I stand on that. The guy that jumps out to me is Debo Samuel. I am out on Debo completely. I think I ranked him like very low compared to where he is going. He looks out of shape in every clip you see. He looks slow. He almost looks like a tight end running down the field. Like and this is the guy who's the guy who works well after the catch. And it just I can't see him having a successful season. And I know they're gonna try and do some fancy stuff with him around the line of scrimmage and doing things like that. But yeah, I don't like Debo here. I don't see him being amazing. And this is a sixth round. Wide receiver 39 is not the craziest, but give me Myers all day over him.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I'll say about different about Debo is like he's kind of had that build, not as big as he is now, but he's kind of been that way his whole career and
Yeah.
he's made it work. But at the same time, I don't know. He is getting older, He dealt with some injuries in San Francisco to end his career there. So I mean, it's just I'm kind of as a football fan excited to see how it plays out in Washington, but not really a risk I'm willing to take in terms of fantasy. I'll let other people kind of take that risk.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into the seventh round. All right. Right. Yeah, we are hitting interesting names here now.
Hmm. Do you have one off the bat? I'm struggling to find one here.
Yeah, I do actually. And for me, that is Matthew Golden. I know he was a first round pick. I know that. And I know there's a chance he is the wide receiver one there, but that room has not had a true wide receiver one in forever. And I don't think Golden is the wide receiver one, the alpha type of guy. Like, I don't think he's that build. I think he's a deep threat. I think he reminds me of a worse Xavier Worthy, and I don't think he can be the alpha there, especially with all the names there. I'd much prefer Jaden Reed. What, 4 picks later, 5 picks later than him? Um, and I think Jaden Reed has a better shot at being the guy there. And Dobbs is still there. And he's a he's the worst for fantasy. He's always sniping fantasy points from the Packers wide receivers and everything. And then there's Kraft. Kraft was getting all the touchdowns last year. It's too messy of a situation, and Golden doesn't scream alpha receiver to me to be able to take him here with some other actual alphas around him like Diggs. And even Shakir is technically the alpha there in Buffalo.
Yeah. No, I mean, as I mentioned before, I am a Packers fan, so this is something that, even being in Dynasty leagues, Golden's a guy that I've been targeting a lot. But in Dynasty, you have that guy forever. In
Yeah.
this, we're talking about a redraft league. And I do agree with you that I don't think he's earned enough to be drafted a bunch Jaden above Jaden Reed. I mean, Jaden Reed did have a poor production season last year, but I still like him as like the top fantasy asset on the Packers from the receiving room. Um, but I do really like Golden's kind of home run ability, and that's very dicey in fantasy, especially in the seventh round. I don't know if you're really drafting a guy for home run ability. You still kind of want to look for that floor and upside build, and he doesn't really have that floor. So, yeah, here in the seventh, maybe if he slides to like ninth, 10th, I'd want to grab him there just because of that home run ability on your bench. But um, yeah, here not too interested in getting him.
Mhm.
Um, but my guy that I'm gonna say is not a good pick in this round is Khalil Shakir. I mean, like we said, this is kind of a point where it's kind of hit or miss. There's a lot of like upside picks here that we're seeing. But Khalil Shakir for me is he had the chance in Buffalo to kind of be that guy. And last year he had that chance and he didn't deliver on it at all. And it's crazy that he didn't really. And Josh Allen's having these MVP years year in and out. And Khalil Shakir can't produce a productive, not, I won't say elite because that's not, shouldn't be expected from him, but like wide receiver two finish. I don't think he had that last year. So
I think he was.
um, I don't know. I see Keon Coleman, if anyone, taking a step up this year and kind of potentially turning into that number one in the offense. But I think Shakir had his chance, and there it goes. But Shakir had his chance, but I don't see him being super productive, and I'd much rather have a guy like Josh Downs, even Jaden Reed above him.
Yeah, I think PPR floor is definitely there for him, but I can agree. I like taking shots on Keon. Just to point out as I scroll down into the eighth round here now, um, last week in the values, again, we're looking at each round in a vacuum. So last week when we were like, oh, our favorite picks in each round, we were doing a lot of running backs just because that's kind of with wide receivers going so early. It
Mhm.
was like, oh, there's a lot of value with the running backs going a little later. And now in the reverse, we're talking about a lot of receivers who were like, this is too early for them. So make sure you're playing how your build is, work with the board as in terms of what your league mates do. Know your league if you can too, because that can always help. Oh, I know this guy in front of me likes drafting his running backs early. Okay, great. Make sure you're like taking note of that and working with that. Um, so yeah, again, we're just looking through a vacuum here. So keep
Yeah,
that in mind.
I mean, also to go off of that, like this isn't exactly how your draft's going to pan out. So a guy like Matthew Golden that we just talked about is like we don't like him a lot in that round. Like I just mentioned, if he falls to round 10 in your league,
Yeah.
I'm fine with taking him there. I'm actually excited to take him there as kind of an upside pick. But it's not that we're out on these guys just for this current ADP, like Ant mentioned. So yeah.
Yeah. You got someone for this round?
Ooh. Uh, hmm. I uh, I think I'm gonna go with Brian Robinson. Um, it's tough to say I don't like a running back at this point in the draft just because I'm assuming it falls off pretty hard here. This might be one of the last starting running backs available just because I'm seeing Jordan Mason there. But I don't know. Again, he just didn't have much of a productive year last year. I mean, I know he had a few good games, but I don't know. I feel like honestly Eckler gets more of a role. He was very productive. We've obviously seen him be a productive piece for fantasy overall and in the NFL, but Brian Robinson here just doesn't excite me if I ever had to start him. It's just not an exciting pick, maybe as a potential backup, but there's just no upside there. It's really just a touchdown floor. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's not an exciting pick, that's for sure. It's boring, but I think this is a fine spot for him. And yeah, I mean, it's boring, but RB 30, eighth round, and you're getting a starting running back. I think that's not bad. Um, I'm gonna just talk about Cup here, back end of the eighth. He's wide receiver 50. I'm just gonna echo what I said about Devontae Adams. We saw Cup disappear at the end of last year, and now he goes to a new team with what is this wide receiver room gonna look like? The pecking order. I know JSN is gonna be the one. Cup should be the two, but and then it's Darnold. And okay, Darnold was great because he was with Kevin O'Connell as his head coach last year. I don't fully trust Darnold, and I don't know. I don't really want to draft Cup anywhere. I'd rather at this point in the draft, I'd rather take my shots on upside.
yeah, I mean, Darnold's a hard guy to trust. I mean, I guess and the only thing in his defense is we saw he was, semi able to support two wide receivers from a fantasy standpoint. But like you said, Kevin O'Connell is a, offensive genius and kind of built that, I think. But yeah, I'm not as big a fan of Cooper Cup here. I guess there's a little bit of upside, just kind of the names that he's around. I mean, we know what he can do, but outside of his really elite season, I mean, the guy hasn't been as consistent as everyone kind of makes him out to be. And now with the scenery change, QB change, coaching change, I don't see how he really improves on how he left last year. So yeah, I tend to agree with you here.
Yeah. All right. We're running low on time here. We got 4 rounds to go.
Okay, we'll speed through.
So round nine here. Yeah, we're gonna go a little over an hour, which is fine. Um,
Okay.
ooh, these are
All
not
right.
pretty names.
I got one
Yeah,
here.
go for it.
I'm gonna go with Rashid Shaheed and kind of echo
Hmm.
what I mentioned about Chris Olave even further. I mean, Olave is a very talented receiver, but Shaheed's just strictly a deep shot guy, and we saw him connect a lot with Derek Carr. I just don't see any QB in New Orleans being able to use him like Carr did or how they did last year. Um, yeah, he's a boom bust kind of guy, and there's no quarterback that can really support that. So, not interested in taking him here.
Yeah, I like Shaheed as a player. I had him in a league last year till he got hurt, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's just that quarterback room. I think you can only take Olave, in my opinion, from that receiver room.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Ayuk's interesting to me. I'm not a fan. We don't even know what he's going to look like coming back from injury, and he wasn't good before the injury. But Tyrone Tracy's really sticking out here. Ugh. Cam Scadaboo's there now too. They drafted Cam Scadaboo. So what's this backfield going to look like? It's not like Tracy was a first round pick last year or anything. He was a late round pick and ended up being solid for them. But Scadaboo could be penciled in as the one right away. And so what does it look like for Tracy? I don't want to mess with that. And the Giants are just not good. They don't have a good offense. I get there's a quarterback upgrade and everything, but the O-line is not good or anything. I don't want Tracy, and I don't want to take my shot on him.
yeah. I mean, a quick note. I know we're running low, but we've talked about ambiguous backfields, and honestly, Tracy is a guy that I'd kind of be willing to take a shot on as my potential RB4. I think around this part in the draft is where I like my roster to if he's positioned in my RB4, I'd like that. But yeah, like you said, a lot of, uncertainty, but I don't know. I see it as a chance to kind of capitalize on people who might be on the scatterbo train.
Yeah. As you'll see though, probably going in the next round, I assume will be Scadaboo. Yeah.
Yep, there he is.
I'd
Yep.
rather take my shot on him who's going after him.
Yeah,
Just
around later.
I think he will be the one there personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking here, there's more ugly names. What are we in the 10th round now? Yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
in round 10 here.
Yep. Hmm.
I actually don't think this is a terrible round. I like every pick in this round personally. I think there's a lot of value here. Um, yeah,
Yeah. The only one that sort of sticks out to me is Bateman. I mean, just but at wide receiver 56, it's like not
yeah.
in terms of value, but in just terms of the player. I don't know. Like
He was
it's
good
like
last
Josh.
year though, and
I
he
know,
scored a
but
touchdown in both playoff games. So
it I know it's there. They extended him. They like him. I I just feel like he's more of a football player than a fantasy player. Like if that makes
yeah,
sense. And so it's like Khalil Shakir with Lamar or with Josh Allen. These guys are putting up MVP numbers at the quarterback position, throwing 30 plus touchdowns, and somehow none of these receivers benefit from it. So I don't know. At the value of wide receiver 56, you can't be mad about it, but yeah.
I think he'll be a pretty solid streamer this year. But yeah, in the 10th round, you're still drafting players. I'd probably bypass on Bateman for some other
Mhm.
guys with a little more upside. And, if I need to stream Bateman, great. But, I'm going to take my shot elsewhere. So I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think, I think though, the rest of this round is great. Like, Goff, I've heard about being drafted too high, but that was because he's being drafted as a top 10 QB. This is
Yeah.
QB 15, which I think is perfectly fine for Goff. So I don't think I want to talk about him as a bust here. Um, yeah, let's just move on. Let's go
Yeah.
to round 11 here.
That was a good quarterback round there. If you have like in round 10,
Yeah,
you have your team pretty much figured out and you can get one of those guys, that's a good quarterback round.
absolutely. Yeah, so now we're getting a little deeper. We're in round 11. You're taking your shots on guys. I know we've talked
Yeah.
about Mims. I think I may have mentioned Kyle Williams before. Um, but yeah, you're really taking your shots on guys. I want to talk about Christian Kirk here. I'd rather invest in the rookies on this team. Jaden Higgins and who's the other one?
Jalen Noel. Jalen
Yeah,
Noel.
Jalen Noel, the two Iowa State receivers. And then
Yeah.
obviously Nico's there. Kirk could be the fourth guy in this pecking order. They traded a seventh rounder for him. It feels like this ADP is making him out to be more valuable than he actually will be for the team. And he's hurt every year. Like he hasn't been valuable for fantasy in a couple years. So again, this is the type of spot you take your shots. I would much prefer going Mims, Kyle Williams, taking my shot on guys who are going after him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the only thing keeping him in Houston right now is the contract that he signed with
Yeah.
Jacksonville. So otherwise, he just
Yeah.
wouldn't be on the team. But yeah, I agree there. I think you're also going to agree with this one is Tajay Spears. I
Mhm.
think it's a guy that, if Pollard ever goes down, sure, he'll have some value. But Pollard is perfectly healthy right now. We both kind of believe in him having a productive season and getting a bulk of these carries and production. And, he's kind of been like this kind of people predicting him to take over the job for these past couple of years, and he just hasn't done it. And he hasn't even been a productive third down role, really, for a fantasy perspective. So, yeah, I just would much rather take a guy like Javonte Williams. And, I'm assuming we're going to see some more names in the next round, but I'd probably rather have those guys, even if they're backups as well.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of in the camp where we don't think it's going to be a split like it's been made out to be. I think it is going to be Pollard is the guy. And Spears is a pass catcher, so he may have some standalone value, but I think Pollard's the guy there. And when Pollard was healthy, Spears didn't do much. So yeah, I agree with this one. Um, yeah, let's go into the last round here that we'll talk about. So this is now round 12,
Hmm.
which yeah, now it's rough. I can't believe Rashad White's still here. That's crazy to me. Well,
I know.
we talked about him earlier, but that's that's a little bit crazy to me. I think the guy here for me, it's Tootin. It's Spatial Tootin. It feels like a lot of smoke. I don't think Tootin's gonna come in and be the guy. I know he's who they drafted and everything, but there's three backs on this roster. ETN, I think, is still the most talented back. I think Bigsby's actually a good running back. So where's Tootin gonna fit in? I'd prefer Bigsby over him, and he's not even in this round here. He's going later. So feel free to wait, grab Bigsby later. I don't see a path for Tootin right away, and he's not a guy I'm gonna be taking a shot on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, again, it's that ambiguous backfield thing, so who knows? Like how the NFL works, this guy could blow up and be the starting running back. But I think we both like the value of ETN right now. And so I think that's why maybe Tuen doesn't stick out to us as a value because we do like ETN. So why would we, invest in Tuen?
Well,
So yeah,
I like Bigsby too, who's
yeah, exactly.
like I said, he's
Bigsby.
going later. Who I'll
Yeah,
look in a minute, but
yeah. I mean, let me know if you don't think this even makes any sense, but my pick is going to be Penix. I just like don't think he should be a drafted quarterback. He he doesn't really have much of a rushing upside, and I don't see him really unleashing his true passing ability out the gates or even at any points this season. So like that means like throwing for 300 plus yard games and like having three touchdown games. I just don't see that. So I really don't see a reason he should be drafted unless you for some reason want to have like a Penix London stack. I don't know. It just kind of for me he kind of seems like a guy that should be going undrafted.
yeah, even in Superflex, I'm not gonna be drafting him. What did he play? I know he played Carolina in one of the games he started, but he played another bad defense too. Like I'm not a believer of Penix, and I know the Falcons are, but I don't believe that he's gonna be this amazing quarterback. I really don't. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think he should go undrafted. Yeah, real quick, I want to see. So this is the 12th round, right? Bashal Tutin's going up there. Let's see where Bigsby's going. Uh, So this would be round 13. He's not even going in he's going in the beginning of round 14. So you get a 2 round discount on Tank Bigsby.
Mm.
Um, love that. I personally love that. And I think I would be taking that shot all day, every day over two in there in the 12th.
I mean, I also just had to point out Geno Smith like 3 rounds down there after Michael Penix. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that's crazy. That's crazy. What's going
yeah,
on with ADP right now? I
I
don't
don't know, but
Yeah, we'll have to do a little checkup on our rankings too, update. We will be doing, I think, somewhat soon. Next few weeks we'll start talking about our rankings, I want to say. Maybe
mhm.
later July, early August we'll start doing that. We want to kind of do our rankings a little bit closer to draft season. But yeah, I mean, the more we see like the ADP though, it's always interesting to see how our rankings are going to check out with one another. And okay, where is Penix going in our rankings? And so
Mhm.
we'll see how it looks. And Fantasy Pros, they have the experts rankings in there, and that's what we base ours off of. So yeah, we'll see how they look according to consensus too. But we have a couple other episodes we have planned coming up. We have a fun one. We're talking about stacks in the next episode. So we're gonna prep some of our favorite stacks. We'll talk about them, value wise, why we like them, maybe the player, the talent. But that's what we have in store for the next episode. And we may be getting that out later this week, potentially. So we'll see. But yeah, thanks for bearing with us through this little hiatus, a little about a week and a half. But yeah, a little bit long episode, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.